Now I'd like to introduce our next company, DroneShield. The CEO is Oleg Vornik. He'll be joining us virtually. And so just a quick overview, DroneShield is an Australian-based company specializing in RF sensing, sensor fusion, electronic warfare, and mil-spec manufacturing, providing AI-driven platforms to protect against drones and autonomous system threats. Its offerings include bespoke and off-the-shelf counter-UAS and electronic warfare solutions such as drone gun, tactical drone gun Mark III, among many other capabilities spanning CUAS and electronic warfare across terrestrial, maritime, and airborne platforms. DroneShield has about 874 million shares outstanding for a market cap of around 2.7 billion Australian dollars.
Thanks for having me. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we could hear you.
Great. Hi, everyone. So to do a very short version of that summary, thank you for doing the introduction. DroneShield is a counter-drone business. What you're seeing on the cover slide of the presentation is our RF Patrol body-worn drone detection device being used in a joint US-UK military exercise called Project Flytrap a couple of months ago. I'll probably take about 15 minutes to talk about the business using this half-annual presentation. We run on December year-end, and we'll turn to Q&A following that. My apologies in advance for everything being in Australian dollars. You can do the mental maths of multiplying everything by 2/3 to get to US dollars. We'll give you the idea. So about 65 US cents, give or take, to an Australian dollar. So we released a record set of results just last month for our first half year end. And that's right across the board. So our revenue, our profitability, the secured revenue for year to date, the pipeline, cash, number of engineering stuff, and so on. And you see the numbers on that slide. I won't talk to all of them, but in a summary, what we're seeing is we've been in this business for about 10 years, right from when small drones were not considered a threat. And that gave us time to really develop the technologies and get in with our customers to be there when they started displaying interest in the counter-drone. We have been in Ukraine right from the beginning of the war. We have hundreds of our systems deployed in Ukraine today. We're getting a lot of intelligence from them. And we are deployed with just about every US government customer you can think of, and generally deployed in dozens of countries around the world across military, intelligence, public safety, and so on. And we think civilian market, by the way, is yet to come. So think about energy infrastructure, airports, data centers, and so on. So there's significant upside. In summary, Ukraine has really shown military planners that you need a lot of drones and a lot of counter-drone equipment. And because it's such a nascent space, really nobody has much. And also, unlike drones, which is, in my biased opinion, a fairly commoditized and saturated space today, everybody has a drone. Counter-drone is a much more complex business with high barriers to entry in terms of the technology, getting in with the customers, and so on. Slide 3 gives you a visual representation of our financials over time. We're seeing significant rise in demand from our customers as they're seeing the defense budgets increase. And even if Ukraine war ends tomorrow, which I think we're all hoping for, that's not going to end it. We're seeing a significant across-the-board increase in Europe and Asia-Pacific and South America, US, Australia, and so on. And that is just driven by military planners saying the time to buy is now, not when you really need it. And clearly every future conflict will have drone and counter-drone component to it. So significant rise in revenues. Rise in SaaS. Now, SaaS, while increasing significantly in percentage terms, is still reasonably low in dollar terms. It's only about 5% of the revenues. But we have a number of strategies to increase it to hopefully closer to 30 to 40% of the overall revenues in the next 5 years, in my belief. And that is driven by more products, so all products, in fact, having software updates. Today, several of our best sellers do not for historical reasons, and also number of products having multiple software updates, as well as some products being pure software offerings. I won't be another presenter telling you about the rise in geopolitical tensions. I think you guys are all across it. The 10 billion US total addressable market, that's a somewhat of an older slide. We're actually in the process of looking at updating that, and we think that the total TAM is more like 5 times the size right now. So a lot of customers today that have one system really need to have more like 10, in the sense that they just put their toe in the water and tried one. A lot of customers have absolutely none. So the opportunity is immense in terms of the counter-drone market around the world, both the military and the civilian market. Slide 6 is a picture slide, and that gives you a summary of everything we offer today. So RF Patrol, body-worn drone detection device, gives you multi-mile range of drone detection. So if you might be a soldier in Ukraine, you are hiding inside a building or in a trench, and the device gives you a real-life alarm when there's a Russian drone nearby, so you're not going to stick your head out and the drone sees you and tries to attack you. This is not a hypothetical situation. We have many hundreds of these in Ukraine today, and we're getting feedback from Ukrainians that the devices have literally saved their lives a number of times. Now, if you're particularly brave, you can then say, okay, well, maybe I take the drone down. So that's where Drone Gun comes in. It's either a pistol or a rifle-shaped jammer, which basically severes the connection between the drone and the pilot or the satellite or the satellite, and the drone responds by landing on the ground. And again, we have a lot of these devices sold around the world, including in Ukraine. For the right-hand side of the slide, you have on-the-move and thick-side products. So that's the Drone Sentry X, the one in the middle next to the F-18, combined radio frequency-based detection and defeat product. So it creates a multi-mile range of detection and defeat, sort of like an invisible bubble. And then we are also complemented with third-party sensors like the radars. You see the radar RPS-82 radars here, very far-range radars, which are like motion detectors in the sky, essentially. The radars, so you see, the cameras, you see the FLIR camera above it. And then on the next slide, you see the Drone Sentry C2 in the middle, which is our software offering, subscription-based, that stitches it all together. Think about it a bit like Google Maps for counter-drones. So you have your facilities, vehicles, soldiers with counter-drone systems loaded onto them, the detections going off, the defeat real-time alerts going off, heat maps of drone flights, quite a bit of analytics, and so on. Then our drone detection sensors also get what we call RFAI, artificial intelligence-based subscription that we release on a quarterly basis. So all of our devices in the field will then users' consent when connected to the internet, stream the data from drones that they collected over time to us, and then our data engineering teams process it. And you need lots of data, just like any artificial intelligence business would, and that enables us to create this AI algorithm to detect never seen before drones. There's thousands of new drones come out, and you can't really use a library-based approach. And then the last box on the slide is we do some electronic warfare work, mostly with the Australian government, around detection of never seen before signals and other domains, similarly very high margin work. So we operate at roughly 70% gross margin, which is pretty unusual for a today substantially hardware business, which is a tribute to how highly differentiated we are and continuing to invest in R&D. And the electronic warfare part is similar margin. I think for the slides we're mostly done, so I'll just talk to it. So I was saying that we have two types of key differentiators, being the technical and the commercial. So we have the largest engineering team, we believe, in the counter-drone space. We have developed over the last 5 years the largest proprietary data set of drone signals in the market and continuing to grow, which enables us to develop next generation artificial intelligence engines for drone detection and defeat. And on the commercial front, we over time have developed credible reputation with number of tier 1 end users who then feed us information in terms of the future drone trends, I mean, you might ask, well, what's an Australian company doing dealing with a global problem like counter-drone? And that's because we get a lot of feedback from places like Ukraine, the US government, military and government users in Latin America, elsewhere in Europe, Australia, and so on. So that's what's giving it a lot of differentiation. In terms of the 2.3 billion Aussie pipeline, majority of the contributors are across US, Europe, and Asia, but we do operate in close to 70 countries around the world. So in terms of the next steps for us, we believe we will do, and this is not guidance, but I guess my opinion, we'll do a bit over 200 million Aussie in revenue this year, so a bit over 130 million US. And I believe on that will be cash flow positive as well as profitable. And if you look at our half-year results, we've been profitable in the half year. And again, this is not guidance, but just my view. The business operates roughly on a 65-70% gross margins. And so if you think about the basic maths, on 200 million in revenue, you'll get about, call it 130 million in gross profit, which will get you roughly 30 million in cash EBITDA for 100 million of cash cost base in the business. And then the only real non-cash expense item of significance is the stock option payments to employees. So that will get you to maybe 20 million of profit before tax on 200 million in revenue, right? So again, just my guess here. These are not guidance. But the beauty of it is, as the business scales, so say if we happen to do 400 million of revenue, the cost will only maybe go up by 25%. So you're really seeing that significant leverage as your profit margin is climbing, as your revenues are increasing. And the reason why we think the revenues will keep climbing significantly is, like I said, the market is at a very small saturation point, and a lot of end users have either nothing or very little by way of counter-drone equipment. And then 5 years from now, the game becomes replacement of existing technology, because whatever they have, whatever they're buying today will not really be appropriate in 5 years from now, because the tech is developing so quickly. I'll stop there and see if there are any thoughts or questions.
Any questions from the audience? Yep, get a mic.
Can you talk more about the competition in the in the counter drone market, so to speak? It sounds like a very strong niche for you all, but I'm just curious what other companies are there, based internationally, U.S. Who is out there, and who are you going against right now?
US and European companies will be our main competitors. It's important to say that traditional defense primes are not our competitors. What we're finding is that by the time you say you need to build a product that costs tens of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars, there'll be brand new hardware every 3 to 4 years, there's going to be quarterly software updates, and you have to develop it largely on your own dime and then present it to the government as opposed to develop it on the government's dollar. Most defense primes kind of say thanks, but no thanks. So as a result, our competition is largely what you'd call mid-tier companies. And for every product segment, if you remember the product slide, we would have a couple of different competitors. So there's nobody that really does everything that we do. So for example, you have a company called Design, which is a roll-up by a Texan-based private equity company called Highlander Partners. So they happen to purchase several of our competitors called Lideye, Black Sage, Radio Hill. That was all about a year and a half ago. So if you ask me, who is your drone gun competitor, I would say, well, Design would be the main one. We probably do more sales than they do, but the company still, like Design, still would sell some. But we don't really see them truly competitor like for like, because what happened was Design, like if you think about the history, right? So when Radio Hill, which is the company that purchased, so that was a small company of a handful of people, privately owned. And for years, in my opinion, they've been under-investing in R&D. So as a result, our drone gun continued to pull further and further away in terms of performance, like the ranges, the versatility, and so on. Let's pick another example. RF Patrol, body-worn drone detector. So there's really only one competitor globally. So it used to be a Danish, now American-owned company called My Defense. They have a product called Wingman. It's a roughly maybe half of the price point and half of the capability. Like they don't have a screen, so don't display quite as much information. They don't detect quite as many drones from what we're hearing. And we have significantly more market share than them in our understanding, both in the US and in Europe. And I can keep going across the products, but the point is that for every product family, you might have one or two competitors. Now, there are no pure play publicly listed counter-drone companies in the world apart from DroneShield. There are some like Khaki or like AeroVironment for whom very small part of what they do is counter-drone. But if you're looking for pure play counter-drone exposure, we're the only option globally.
Excellent. We have another question.
Hi there. So my question, I kind of have two questions. So one, kind of off of the last question, you spoke a little bit about the competition in the space. Do you guys see it as a kind of a non-zero sum market that you guys are, looking to dominate? Do you see room for multiple winners? And then I noticed you emphasize that you have $2 billion plus pipeline. How aggressively are you looking to grow that pipeline from here?
On the last point, we previously stated before that we're aiming to double it over the next several years. I mean, to be honest with you, I always find pipeline a bit of a hypothetical situation. It's like, okay, well, pipeline is nice, but what does it mean in terms of revenue projections? And the industry is so nascent that it's very hard to project. So I think that we can continue growing at the sort of rates that you've seen recently, and it's certainly not a zero-sum game in that the market will grow immensely. So I think today the amount of Western purchased counter-drone will probably multiply every year by a factor, right? And that's because of low market saturation. So we don't necessarily need to fight other people for market share, just so long as we keep it and the industry continues to rise. And I think it will for a long time because, like we're discussing, everybody needs counter-drone and has very little of, and that's even before you talk about the civilian space, all of those things. So I think we still got a very long way to go in terms of where the market is, and it's going to, I think, help number of companies, and we just happen to be a major player, but we don't need to be displacing others.
Any further questions from the audience? I have a few here myself. Maybe you could just talk more towards the opportunity you see in software. You touched on it briefly in your presentation. Just be curious to hear some more color on that.
So the product is a combination of hardware and software. However, not every product we do has SaaS attached to it. For example, drone guns, they have been around for quite some time. In fact, so much so that a lot of people associate DroneShield as a drone gun company, but that's actually one of our simplest technologies today. The aim is to have SaaS as close to that 30-40% mark of the total revenues as possible. And so we will continue to invest in AI-enabled detection software engines, defeat software engines. Some products like DroneSentry X will have both attached to it. The AI sensor fusion in our command and control systems, which we think will be a good contender for both the military markets on a small scale, so we're not out there competing with Lockheed C2s, but specifically as a specialist counter-drone C2, as well as in the civilian space, where we think we have a very good shot at the C2 for the likes of airports, critical infrastructure, and whatnot. We think that Sentry Civ, which was actually a product on the very right-hand side of the slide, didn't get a chance to talk about it, it will be a significant contributor to software. So Sentry Civ is essentially a box which comes with a tablet, and that gives you real-time drone tracks around your facility. And it doesn't have defeat capability because a lot of our civilian customers don't have a legal ability to defeat drones anyway, but it tells you where the drone is, where it started from. Chances are the pilot is around where the drone started from. You can go and apprehend the pilot. if you know where the drone stopped, if you're a data center, you can go and grab the drone, and that means you don't have a cyber potential breach anymore. So that gives you quite a bit of capability, and that's 20 grand a year. Costs us about 6 grand to make, so you have decent margin in year one and essentially 100% margin from year 2 onwards. And then we're working on additional service and software packages going forward to kind of have a whole through the live customer experience. So thinking about training, certifications, and so on. So you kind of capture as much of the ecosystem around a complete counter-drone experience as you can. Like, for example, we are working with another Aussie company called XRG that does the virtual reality goggles. And so we're working with them right now on a package to train customers in a virtual reality setting on basically counter-drone training courses.
Excellent. Maybe a question I had was just given this is a global market. I guess how does DroneShield go about prioritizing what geographies to approach?
So what we're finding is that fundamentally 2 customers want sovereign on-the-ground capability, being the US and Europe. All the other customers are fairly relaxed for the equipment to be made in Australia, developed in Australia, and so on. So to respond to that, so today everything is designed and made in Australia, but there is significant element of American components, like we use American chips and so on. And I mean, obviously, we don't use Chinese gear, we don't sell to China and so on. Now, we are in the process of setting up US manufacturing as well as European manufacturing to provide for those customers. Like, for example, in the US, yes, Australia is an exemption for Buy American Act, but sentimentally we'll find it's easier to sell more in the US market if we have American made. And in Europe, similarly, there's now 800 billion euro rearm Europe plan. You need 65% plus local content to participate. So that European made will help into that plan when it finally gets going, which will be probably in the next 6-9 months, I'm guessing. And for everybody else, like, for example, we sell quite a bit to the Japanese. They're perfectly happy for the gear to be made in Australia. So the way the distribution works is we have, or the sales focus is, we have distributors in about 70 countries around the world. And then we have in-house sales teams, which are split between Europe, US, and South America, Middle East, and Australia, and they manage those distributors. So essentially, there's more weighting on US, Europe, and Japan now in terms of, I guess, the focus and the time we spend. But if, for example, tomorrow Colombia goes from a medium to really strong market, we're able to basically just put more sales guys in that market and prioritize it further.
And I want to pivot just on emerging threats. It seems like the market's constantly evolving. I guess how is DroneShield staying ahead of that, and what are you most focused on?
The market is indeed evolving, and we love it, because if it didn't, the industry would commoditize and we would not be able to get those 70% gross margins. So to stay ahead of the threat, you need to receive the latest intelligence, and that's where our relationships with tier 1 customers, distributors, and so on come into. So the feedback from our gear deployed in Ukraine and Latin America, where our customers are battling narcos using drones, in Africa, where our US government customers are dealing with various terrorist organizations, in Asia Pacific, where countries are dealing with the latest Chinese drones and so on. So all of that is feeding in our direction. So that is shaping the technology roadmap, and then in turn you have to action that. So that's where under 300 engineers, which will probably be close to between 400 and 500 by end of next year, come in terms of that execution, and then pushing it out to our customers around the world.
And just one last question here, just maybe at a high level, 5 years out, what's the vision?
The vision is to have many thousands of devices deployed with the customers in terms of the hardware. So today we have a couple thousand, all receiving multiple streams of AI-enabled software updates, and then on edge entirely training themselves, which for us is the next generation of our AI engines, which will come out next year. So the device, if it sees never seen before drone, it trains right on the spot on edge. Today it's trained in our facility in terms of the engine, so trained fully on edge and learns from seeing things it never seen before, and seeing that across defense customers, civilian customers, and kind of everything in between, like border security and intelligence and so on. I think this would be a huge opportunity of its own in terms of the revenue. So revenue in the billions is entirely achievable, I think, over the next 5 to 10 years. And we don't really need to go completely outside of that. So the plan is to stay within the counter drone with maybe an element of electronic warfare because it's quite adjacent. But that's our focus. That's what we're good at.
Excellent. Well, thank you for a great discussion. We're excited about all the things happening at DroneShield, and we'd look forward to having you back here next year.
Thank you for your time. Take care.
Thank you.
Investors should carefully consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the ETF before investing. The prospectus, which contains more complete information about this and other matters, should be read carefully before investing. To obtain a prospectus, please call 800 Gabelli or visit www.gabelli.com. Risks to the ETF include a downturn in commercial air travel, production and/or supply chain disruptions, decreases in defense spending, subcontractor financial health, and competition and/or technology changes.